Welcome into the opening first pitch show. We're breaking down the National League in this first video. I got a esteemed panel of guests, and to my right, I believe, Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com. We got Bryan Leonard, also at WagerTalk.com, and you guessed it, at WagerTalk.com. Last, certainly not least, Dave Cokin. So this is the National League preview, guys. We're going each and every day, Monday through Friday, on the opening pitch. I am Drew Martin. Start off going around the horn here. Steve, welcome in, buddy. We got opening day on Thursday. How you feeling? And welcome into the show.
Baseball's a great sport. I always preach taking a long-term investment approach. And if you really do so, I would have to say baseball is probably the best sport to be betting. First of all, we have, basically the equivalent of an NFL schedule each and every day for 7 straight months, anywhere from 14 to 15 games. You don't have to wait every Sunday like we do in the NFL. We get that every day, 7 times more per week. With that said, though, baseball is also a sport a lot of people don't play because it's not the NFL. It's not college basketball during the tournament. So you have to take that long-term investment approach. We don't necessarily find as many situational spots in baseball. It's more of a daily grind. Statistics become a large part of it. But that's why I love handicapping. I'm looking forward to a full baseball season this year, Drew. It was nice last year, but we'll have even more action this year with the full season.
Yeah, sure. A big difference from last year, no doubt about it. Guys, check out Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com. We also got the coupon code FirstPitch200, taking $200 off Steve Merril's full MLB season. It's good for any handicapper. First pitch, all spelled out, 200 at the end. First pitch, 200 at checkout, MLB full season. We got next up here, Bryan Leonard, WagerTalk.com. Welcome in, Bryan. How you feeling about baseball season, buddy?
I'm feeling real excited about baseball. Dave Cokin and I are just finished our fantasy drafts for the weekend, and we always seem to be up at the top, so let's hope it continues there. But betting on fantasy, being in fantasy drafts definitely helps you in baseball, because offensively, it's basically a one-man show, pitcher against batter, and that's what baseball is. What I like about baseball, as well as hockey, is you align yourself with the exact same thing that the team wants to do. They just want to win. They don't need to cover 7.5 points. They don't need to be close and get 7.5 points. They come out to the game to win, and that's the way we bet in baseball and hockey, and that's why I think we have an advantage.
Absolutely, Bryan. And last, certainly not least, Dave Cokin. Dave, welcome in, buddy. I know you're excited about Thursday opening day.
Well, I get excited once they start playing spring training games because it's my favorite sport. As a fan, it's always been my favorite sport. I am a seam head. There's no question about that. And I'll mention that last year, #1 in baseball at WagerTalk, and we've got a special up for this year, full season. It's discounted to $8.95 right through the World Series. And also, you'll get my hockey as a free bonus. And last 2 years combined, I'm #1 at WagerTalk in the NHL. So it's a good special. And let's go. Let's talk some ball.
Let's get after it, Dave. Guys, we're going through each and every team here in the National League. We'll get handicappers' opinion on their fade team and some betting nuggets on each one. We're going down in ABC order, all the National League teams here. Dave, starting off with you. In the NL West, we got the Arizona Diamondbacks in ABC order here. Looks like we're seeing 75.5 as their season win total. Of course, in the NL West, there's 2 powerhouses out there, mainly the LA Dodgers and the San Diego Padres, Dave. But we still can get Arizona at plus 6,500 to win the NL West. Of course, risking $100 to win 6,500 if they do win the whole National League. Actually, talking about that.
You can throw that ticket away because they're not winning that division. Okay, they're not a terrible team, but there's just too many holes. They're not going to be able to compete with the Padres or Dodgers. Strengths: Ketel Marte is a heck of a player in center field. Nick Ahmed's developed into a real nice shortstop. I think Christian Walker's a pretty good ball player. David Peralta had a bad time last year, but he's a solid player. I like Carson Kelly behind the plate. And they've got some decent bench guys, but the pitching is an issue. Madison Bumgarner's best days are well behind him. His velocity's ticked down, and as much of a competitor as he is, he's just not close to a #1 starter anymore. Kind of like Merril Kelly, kind of like Caleb Smith in the middle of the rotation. Back of the rotation looks weak. The bullpen's very unsettled. Torrio Lovello is going to have to mix and match. I think the win total is probably about right. on the Padres. I don't think they're good enough to be 500, but they might be better than the Giants. They might be better than the Rockies, but no chance against the top two in that division.
Steve, next team up here in ABC order, we got the Atlanta Braves heading to the NL East. We're seeing the Atlanta Braves, 35-25, the NL East winner of that division just last season. Of course, guys, you got to remember 35-25, just a 60-game season last season, now going to 162. You kind of got to times it. 2.7 is a number you'll hear in the analytics world here. But we got the Atlanta Braves, Steve, at 91.5 wins in the marketplace. What are you thinking here with a lot of people's pick to win the NL East here, Steve?
Yeah, Drew, they're priced to perfection. I was a little surprised even to see 91.5. I mean, that's a big number for an Atlanta team that was a bottom feeder in just recent years. But as you mentioned, they did win the NL East last year. However, it was a very dangerous division offensively. Nobody really could find any pitching, including the Braves. The Braves were an offensive team. But if you look at the stats from last year in the National League, just National League teams only, the top three teams as far as offensive slugging and on-base percentage, OPS, which I think is the best overall combination of everything, was Nationals, Braves, Phillies, and Mets. They're all up there. The Mets, Nationals, and Braves are basically top three in that category. Most of them are top five in slugging, on base, batting average. So there's some more competition in this division, I think, than people realize. And I mentioned once again, pitching is kind of what got everybody. The Braves were not getting it done with pitching, and I think that's a problem come postseason. Overall, they're the fourth favorite overall in the entire Major League Baseball at 10-1, yet they're only third favorite in the NL. Both the Padres and Dodgers are ahead of them. And I think both those teams have more consistent pitching. So Braves might be a little overvalued at this point in the season, especially if some of those other National League East teams, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes, Mets, Phillies, Nationals, if they can start getting going. And keep in mind, the most profitable team in the entire division against the money line last year was actually the Marlins. So I think the NL East could be a dangerous one for the Braves. They might be a little overpriced for that reason.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. It's kind of buy high here on the Braves. Not to say that they can hit their season win total to the over. Good stuff, Steve. We got Bryan up next here, heading down the list, ABC order, Chicago Cubs. Bryan, seeing them in the marketplace right now, just 78.5 wins as their season win total. This is the lowest I can really remember in terms of season wins for the Chicago Cubs. Maybe coming on a little bit of hard time, but might be a buy low spot here on the Cubs. What are you thinking, Bryan?
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in the Cubs this year. Their best players have injury histories. They've got a lot of money invested in a lot of these players, and they just don't have anybody coming up from the minors this year. Maybe one starter that'll make an appearance that I think is going to help them out. And that's one of the things when you're betting baseball is you're not only betting on the 26-man roster, you're not only betting on the 40-man roster, you're betting on the entire organization and the ability to go out and sign people and make trades as the season goes on. The Cubs are in a major market, but I don't see this team really looking to win this year. Obviously, they're going to go out and try to win, but I just don't see it out of this team. Other than Kyle Hendricks, I'm not a big fan of anybody in the starting rotation. The bullpen's a little bit better than it was last year, but you're also counting on guys that have seen better days in the past, and some of their better guys in the bullpen are getting a little bit long in the tooth. From a hitting standpoint, it's home runs or nothing out of this team. If they hit a home run, the Cubs could win. And they've got guys on this lineup. They've got, you go look down the entire lineup there, suppose it's starting 9 or starting 8 in the National League. They've got everybody expected to hit double-digit home runs, but 3 or 4 guys that are supposed to hit about 28 or so. But I just don't see the good batting averages, the guys getting on base here. That is a concern when you hit home runs or nothing. So I think the Cubs are in for a longer season. I'm not a big fan of the Cubs this year.
All right, Bryan, good stuff. We got Dave up next. The Cincinnati Reds, also in the NL Central here. We're seeing their season win total in the betting marketplace right around 500 here, Dave. Seeing 81.5 for the Cincinnati Reds. What do you think with the Redbirds this season, Dave?
I think they might be kind of hard-pressed to get to 81.5. It's not one of the bets I made, but I would lean to the under. And the problem is the offense, actually, which you look at the lineup and you say, well, there's some pretty good names there. But the offense really didn't produce that much last year. They did their damage with a great pitching staff at the top. Castillo's just a stud, and Trevor Bauer was outstanding. But Bauer's not there anymore. Sonny Gray will start the season injured, but he should be fine. Castillo's still there. I like Tyler Mahle. He's been kind of a bad luck guy more than anything else over the past couple of years. The back of the rotation looks I don't know. Wade Miley's like 900 years old. Jeff Hoffman's never really gotten it done. Jose De Leon is a fringy guy. Bullpen could be average, but the lineup's got to deliver more. Suarez is trying to hit everything out of the ballpark, and he can hit home runs, but you've also got to not swing and miss all the time. Moustakas is back at third base, where I don't know that he's a plus at that position anymore. They're going to go with Jonathan India at second base. Senzel's a star in the making. I like Jesse Winker. And Castellanos is an outstanding player. The problem is this. As of now, they've got Joey Votto projected to hit third in the lineup. Now, this is 3 or 4 years ago. That's great. Joey Votto is one of the best hitters in baseball, and you want him there. But Joey Votto's not one of the best hitters in baseball anymore. He has declined. There's no question about that. And the fact they've got him slated to hit third, I think is going to be an issue for him. You've got to have your 2 best hitters hitting second and third. Votto's not one of their best hitters anymore. I think they're going to have to bite the bullet there and make some lineup changes if they want to contend in the NL Central. And I have my doubts as to whether they'll do it. I think Cincinnati's probably about a 75 to 78 win team this year, which means they will not be back in the playoffs.
All right, maybe look towards the under on that season win total. Guys, check out Dave at WagerTalk.com. And if you get his MLB season, remember, you can get it for $200 off. First pitch, $200 at checkout is that coupon code. First pitch, $200 at checkout. Steve, coming to you next here, moving to a mile high here. Colorado Rockies, seeing their win total at 62.5. Colorado, always an interesting, tricky handicap. Just because of their home field, so much elevation there. What are you thinking with the Rockies this season, Steve?
Yeah, I'm glad the alphabetical order gave me this team, actually, Drew, because one thing I like to point out is that when I do baseball, I talked about lots of stats. I like to look at road numbers because, once again, every home park is a little different, and this is the extreme example of that. We have another team in this division, by the way, Arizona, which we led off with Dave also, that has a little bit more offensive-friendly powers at home. So I'd like to look at road numbers always with Colorado more than any other team. They were bottom half in most statistical categories last year on the road: slugging percentage, batting average, on base plus slugging. And what's surprising about Colorado, they become more of a pitcher team, actually, and they've always put together a rotation which benefits from the ball carrying in Coors Field. So they're going to have to win some home games this year. And by the way, most teams, Drew, are allowing about 20 to 30% attendance as of now. Colorado's going to allow 42.5% at home. So it'll be one of the more full ballparks if people come. We'll see if they can carry that momentum at home, because right now they're projected to probably be the worst team in this division. Keep in mind, you've got to get by the 2 favorites to win the whole thing, not just National League. American League, National League combined are in the same division here with the Padres and Dodgers. Odds makers have it about 80 and 90% that each of those make the playoffs. That means there's only one wild card spot left for anybody in the NL, and they got to get by San Francisco and Arizona as well, which are ranked ahead of them. So it's going to be a tough season for Colorado. And I think what you bring up with home field is accurate. They're going to have to win some of those altitude games and take advantage of that very unique ballpark to have a chance. But it's hard to get behind them otherwise in a very deep NL West against the powerhouse teams. By the way, I will say this: Colorado has some pitching. They led the league last year in quality starts, even over the Dodgers, some of the other playoff teams. That's 6 innings, 3 runs or less, which once again is surprising considering they have that altitude. So they have learned to pitch there and use that to their advantage. We'll see if they can do it again this year.
Yeah, good stuff, Steve. I've always thought Colorado a very tricky handicap in themselves, and looking at the road numbers, very important. Bryan, coming to you next, going from one of the worst, I think the Pittsburgh Pirates are the lowest season win total in the NL, but Colorado right there at second, to the highest win total here, talking about what can a $250 million buy you for an MLB roster this season? And no, I'm not embellishing. Their payroll sitting at $248 million, Bryan. We're talking about the LA Dodgers here. Of course, the defending World Series champions. Season win total up and over the century mark. I'm seeing 103.5 now on the Dodgers, but heck, is it high enough, Bryan? What are you thinking for the Dodgers this season?
Yeah, you're not going to get rich betting overs when you have something over 103 in that range. History says that there's some regression involved, and you would think there'd be some regression involved with the Dodgers after winning the World Series, after being so close all these years. But you take a look at this lineup, you take a look at the pitching staff, you take a look at the guys down in the minors that are being stopped by the guys in front of them. They just cannot get the time, and these guys would be starting on many other teams in Major League Baseball. It's hard to bet against the Dodgers. So, Dave kind of hit it when he talked about Arizona. Nobody in this division really has a chance. I believe the Padres are +2 to 1 or whatever, and the Padres are loaded too. There's two teams in this division and everybody else. It reminds me of the American League East for all those years with the Yankees and the Red Sox. The Dodgers can win as many games as they want, and that's the problem you have when you're betting a total in season wins. The team is just loaded. The pitching staff is probably, in fact, I know they're the best pitching staff in baseball, probably 1 through 8. When you take a look at the starters, we've got guys in the minors, even in the bullpen, that would be starting on these clubs, on other major league clubs. So it's hard to find any problems with the Dodgers other than maybe the manager makes some weird decisions once in a while. Not the best in-game manager in baseball. And if you follow Dave enough on Twitter, you know he feels the same way. So love the Dodgers, but can't bet them at this number. It'll be an interesting season. And you got to figure that this is the team that's going to win it all, but a long way to go.
Yeah, Brian. I mean, you bring up their pitching staff and Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May. I don't even think are on their projected starting rotation, which is pretty impressive in itself. Dave, we got next team up here, the formerly known as the Florida Marlins, the Miami Marlins here, sitting at 71.5 projected as their season win totals here, Dave. Not a lot of times you see a team finish over 500 and then the next season, their season win total sitting at 71.5. A lot of people not really high on the Marlins this season, but that pitching rotation looks pretty strong. What's your view on the Marlins?
Well, and I agree that they're going to regress. Everything went right for the Marlins last year. They were the surprise team in baseball. And, making the playoffs was just amazing to me. But they've got to regress this year. They just don't have the offense to compete in that division. I do like the young staff. Alcantara's a good pitcher. Pablo Lopez has really good stuff. And as he matures and his command improves, he could become a top-flight pitcher. Sixto Sanchez is good. Hernandez and Rogers are not the worst 4 and 5 that you'll find. The bullpen the bullpen might be a bit of a concern, but that you could say that about a lot of teams. But I don't know where the runs are going to come from. Aside from Starling Marte, Corey Dickerson, there's just not a lot to like on this offense. And they're in a really tough division. If you put them in the Central, they'd have a chance to maybe not compete for the title, but they'd be more respectable. But they've got 4 teams that are just better than they are in this division. I think they will finish last. The odds makers put it in the number. I mean, they made it so low that I couldn't bet it. But I do see the Marlins struggling to win 70 games this season.
All right, Steve, next team up, we got the Milwaukee Brewers, seeing their season win total about 83.5 here, slightly over 500. What are you thinking with the Brew Crew this season?
Yeah, it's interesting that they're right above the Mendoza line. They're a slightly winning team according to the season win total by a game or two, and that's kind of what they were last year. They finished 29-31. And something I want to point out we haven't talked about yet, keep in mind with that crazy 60-game schedule as you referenced last year, Drew, basically you played your division only. And, some of the win-loss records are a little skewed because of that. And we talked a lot about it here heading into the playoffs, how some teams have played a ton of winning teams, others have played very few. Yes, the Dodgers and Padres were powerhouse teams, but they also feasted on those other weaklings in their own division. That wasn't the case for these NL Central teams. And Milwaukee's a good example. They finished 2 games below 500, yet they had played a ton of games against winning teams. They played 43 games against better than 500 teams last year. And that's because the Cubs, Cardinals, and Reds all ended up finishing above 500. They all kind of beat up on each other. And I think for that reason, maybe we get some value with these NL Central teams, including the Pirates, who we'll get to in a moment, that definitely was the worst team in baseball. So be careful looking at the results last year. I mentioned using road stats only. We also have to be careful with all stats just because they did not play a balanced schedule. I think Milwaukee could be a little bit under the radar for that reason. They were very mediocre hitting-wise, but I think their pitching staff has the potential to contend here. And we might be catching a little value with the Brewers and some of these other NL Central teams for that reason.
Yeah, NL Central maybe looking a little down. We got Bryan, next team up here. New York Mets heading back to the NL East, 90.5 for their season win total. So odds makers thinking a bounce back season for the Mets, Bryan.
I agree. I like this Mets team. The problem is I've liked this Mets team for a few years now, similar to the Phillies, where they seem to underperform each and every year based on the amount of talent they have. That is a concern for the Mets, but I think the Mets should be a really good team this year. To me, they've been a disappointment in spring training. Now, obviously, you've been watching the games of spring training. They don't count, but I haven't liked a lot of things I've seen out of the Mets in spring training. They don't seem to have the will to win that they need. Now, obviously, regular season is totally different, but bringing in Francisco Lindor, he's a guy that you want in your locker room. He's just a fun guy. He's going to really help this team. So I wouldn't think they're going to have too many problems with personnel decisions out of this bullpen or out of this team for this season. I talked about the top 8 players on the last team. I talked about the Cubs. 15 home runs and better for everybody expected out of this Mets lineup. Big power hitting team. I liked some of the guys that get on base a lot. Jeff McNeil batting lower in the order. He'd be batting leadoff or second for most teams, but didn't have this kind of talent. The starting rotation, they went out. They got Stroman last year, Walker this year. Joey Lucchesi comes by. I love Lucchesi. I think he should be a long reliever. Just that strange delivery he has, to be able to bring that in the middle of the game, I think would be a better situation. But I'm not the coach here. But they've got guys that are really good. Syndergaard's down there injured right now. Carlos Carrasco is probably going to miss a start or so. So they're very deep in the starting rotation. And you couldn't talk about the Mets without talking about the bullpen. Diaz made some changes last year and got really good once again. Yep. He's one of the best in business. You got Trevor May out there, Betances, who struggled earlier in spring training, but he's proven. Familia, Lope, Gesselman, they've got a lot of guys in that bullpen that are quality pitchers. So the bullpen's a lot better than it has been. I think the Mets are going to be one of the 2 teams. They'll finish first or second in this division. And I like the Mets, but the number is basically where I thought it should be. And that's my problem when I'm betting on the Mets.
He's Bryan Leonard. Check him out, WagerTalk.com. Guys, we also got a special with Bryan. Get Dwayne Bryan and Bryan Leonard 2-for-1 MLB season package there. Check it out, WagerTalk.com. Dwayne Bryan and Bryan Leonard 2-for-1 deal at WagerTalk.com. Next team up here, Dave, we got the Philadelphia Phillies staying in the NL East, 81.5 right here at the 500 mark. Pretty much betting you think they'll be over or under a 500 team here, Dave.
They're the mystery team in the league. I think they might be the toughest team to figure out going in all of Major League Baseball, because they've got a chance to be really good and they also got a chance to be bad. The bullpen is the big issue. It was historically awful last season, literally historically awful. They've made some changes in the offseason. They brought in Archie Bradley. They brought in Jose Alvarado. They've now got Vince Velasquez coming out of the pen, which is where I think he's always belonged. I think Connor Brogdon can be a decent pitcher for them coming out of the pen. The top 2 guys in the rotation are very rock solid, Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. And then you've got the issues. Eflin, Matt Moore, and Chase Anderson. The 4-5 spots, I think Eflin's all right, but Moore and Anderson in the 4-5, that's scary. The team's going to hit. There's no weaknesses. I think Alec Boehm is a star on the rise. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. Real Muto is the best catcher in baseball. Bryce Harper might never live up to all the billing that he had and the start that he had, but he's still a good ball player. I think Hoskins will be better than he was last year. Segura, Didi Gregorius, a really good clubhouse guy. He'll help them. McCutcheon still has some talent. They're a dangerous baseball team. If the bullpen holds up and the starting rotation isn't awful in the 4 or 5 spots, they're going to be a winning team and a contender in the NL East. But those are big ifs. And if those continue to be issues for them and the bullpen doesn't get better, then they'll be a losing team and they'll have to start selling pieces at the deadline. Going to be a really interesting year for the Phillies.
As it will. We got Steve Merril up next here. Pittsburgh Pirates, the lowest season win total I'm seeing in the National League. Always an interesting handicap, getting these outliers, Steve, the Dodgers and maybe the Pirates here on the bottom side, pretty much betting on them, 59.5, 60 as their season win total. So 102 losses. Heck, if they only get 101 losses, you win your season win total bet to the over on the Pirates. I don't know about that bet, though, Steve. What are you thinking here with the Pirates this season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more comfortable taking them maybe on a season win total or a day-to-day basis. I don't think we want anything to do with the divisional or the NL futures, for example. I'm not going to go that far, but I do think there's some potential play-on situations with Pittsburgh. I still remember Dave Cokin and I were doing the Daily Baseball show last year, and Pittsburgh was on a 4-17 slide, and then all of a sudden they went off and ran off 3 straight, swept the Brewers, who we just talked about earlier, were above 500 team. And we saw Pittsburgh have little bursts like that last season. In fact, if you take out that awful 4-17 start, they were just 15-24 down the stretch. still 38% win percentage. That's right around that season win total. Nothing special. But once again, I talked about the unbalanced schedules last year, and I forgot to mention when I just talked about the last team, the Milwaukee Brewers, that these teams not only played the NL Central, but they also played the AL Central, which also had 3 out of their 5 teams above 500. So, yes, Pittsburgh's not a good team, but they played a much tougher schedule than some other teams out there. And if you look at run differential, they finished last in the National League, just 1 run net worse than the Colorado Rockies. They finished ahead of the Texas Rangers, who are actually worse than all of baseball in run differential. So I think there's some potential play on spots with Pittsburgh, and they were a very streaky team last year. I wouldn't touch the future odds with Dave Cokin's. I maybe would do it with Bryan Leonard's money, but not Dave's money. But I would maybe look at some over-under win totals here with Pittsburgh. This is the lowest total, but I think they maybe could surprise in certain situations.
Yeah, that is pretty low. I mean, betting on a team, having over 100 losses, always an interesting handicap. But moving down the list here, Bryan, we got the San Diego Padres projected second in the NL West behind the LA Dodgers, seeing 95.5 wins here for the Padres. They have added some good arms there in that rotation. Blake Snell, Yu Darvish. They also got Chris Paddock. Looks like Lemon as well. So this starting rotation, not anything to shake your head out here, Bryan. What are you thinking? 95.5 wins for the San Diego Padres.
Yeah, you're not going to find many teams other than the Dodgers that can match the Padres in the starting rotation. Right now, Lamenta out of the lineup, Clevenger out for the season, but they'll be back next year, just loaded. And I really like what they've done in the bullpen. Right now, nobody's come out and said who the closer is going to be. Pomerantz had that last year, but you're looking at from top to bottom in the bullpen. It's probably the best bullpen in the major leagues. And if you take a look at their guys that are out injured right now, Austin Adams, Jose Castillo, Javi Guerra, Matt Strom, Wininger. I mean, they are so loaded in the pitching staff that they should have no problem with players getting injured this year. This is a team that is set up from the pitching standpoint. What I like about the batting standpoint is opposed to the Dodgers, who have so many guys that they depend on the home run, we've got probably 5 guys in this lineup that can steal double-digit bases. And that's something that you don't see much anymore. It's so hard to find guys that steal bases. And this team can run. The Padres are probably the best all-around offense in baseball, from being able to change their lineup. If they've got a hot pitcher, just get that single, steal second, bunt them over to third. You're not going to see that from the Dodgers. So the Padres are a very good team. But once again, in that division with the Dodgers, it's tough to pick them to beat the Dodgers at 2-1. I think the line's fair. It's a 2-team division. Everybody knows it. And it'll be fun to watch these two as the season goes on.
Dave, next team up, we're moving up the coast here in the state of California. San Francisco Giants, 75.5, seeing their season win total right now. What are you thinking with the Giants this season, Dave?
Well, they overachieved last year, but part of it was the fact that they had great chemistry and never thought they were out of a ball game. And Gabe Kapler did a heck of a job making use of his entire roster. I think he might have done that better than anybody in baseball last year, because they've got a lot of really average pieces, but everybody was in every game, basically. A lot of platooning going on, and I think you'll see more of the same this year. Mike Yastrzemski's developed into their best player, late bloomer, grandson of the Hall of Famer Carl Yastrzemski, and he's become an absolute star. Buster Posey, we'll see what kind of mileage he's got left in him. Of course, he didn't play last year, so he should be fresh. Donovan Solano's a guy who nobody really expected to be more than kind of a utility guy. He's developed into a good player. They're going to do a ton of platooning once again, so he'll make use of the entire roster. I don't think they can be as good as they were last year, simply because I think they benefited from it being a short season, and it camouflaged a lot of their weaknesses. This is still a rotation that just it could be really bad. Johnny Cueto, not much left there. DeSclafani has been kind of a fringy guy with Cincinnati. Gossman, you never know what you're going to get from him, although he did pitch better last year. Back of the rotation, nah. I don't see them as a winning team. I think they're probably going to regress this season. But, again, keep an eye on them early, because if the magic touch is still there, with them pulling out games in the late inning, they might end up being better on the field than they are on paper.
He's Dave Cokin. Check him out, WagerTalk.com. Guys, we also got a special with Dave. When you buy his MLB full season package, you'll get the rest of his NHL season on the house. So check him out, WagerTalk.com. Dave Cokin, MLB full season. You get the rest of his NHL season as well. Steve, next team up here. We only got 2 left in the National League. We got the St. Louis Cardinals. Yep, that's it. 86.5 wins is what I'm seeing in the marketplace right now. What are you thinking here with the Redbirds in the NL Central?
Yeah, I'll stick with the NL Central here, and I'm glad I've got this division because, as I've mentioned, I think there's a lot of parity here. Last year, they kind of feasted on each other, 3 of the 5 teams above 500. And as I mentioned earlier, Pittsburgh was really bad, but they also had to play all those AL Central teams with 3 above 500. And St. Louis is the odds-on favorite to win this division right now. They're a little bit better than even money. You look at their season win total, it's around 86.5, but then you've got other teams, excluding Pittsburgh, who we just talked about, is awful. But we have Cincinnati at 81.5, Milwaukee 83.5. Cubs are around that 79 mark, anywhere from 78.5 to 79.5. So there's a lot of competition in this division. And I think for that reason, you probably want to look to fade the favorite here in St. Louis. I'm not sold on their offense. If you look at road stats only, which I like to do, they were bottom third in all the key offensive stat categories last year during that 60-game season. They're going to have to get it done with pitching. Maybe they can do that, but you're always one injury away from a big blow when you're relying heavily on pitching throughout 162 games. So I think St. Louis could be a little bit of a play against you. They could very well win this division. They are the favorite, but I think it's really a toss-up among 3 or 4 different teams here, and I'd look to probably fade them. I think there's probably value with some of those other teams we've talked about in the NL Central.
All right, Steve. Last team up, guys, and then we'll hit best bets from the panel. Bryan, finish us off here with heading to the nation's capital. We got the Washington Nationals seeing their season win total at 84.5. What are you thinking with the Nats this season, Bryan?
Yeah, it all comes down to the pitching staff for the Nationals. Take a look at the top 4 starters in age. By the time the season's over, Scherzer, 37, Corbin, 32, Strasburg, 33, Lester, 37. And that comes, for the most part, with guys that have had an injury in the injured past. The concern I have for Washington is when you take a look at their entire organization, they've got 3 guys ranked from 11 to 20 down to the minors for starters. So they may make it all the way up to the pros today or this year, but they're not top prospects, and that is a concern. I do like the bullpen for Washington. They're much better than they were last year. They brought in Brad Hand, who is not the same pitcher that he was before, but he still has a way to get people out with that big curveball. His fastball velocity is pretty much non-existent anymore, but we've seen that out of Andrew Miller and some other guys with that big hook that they could still get people out. But the bullpen I really like. The starters I have some concerns about, all on the back end of their careers. The projected bench, I like the guys on the bench. I think they're quality. The starters are very good, led by Juan Soto, to me the best hitter in baseball right now. If you're looking for one guy to lead your team, he's the guy I want. They brought in Josh Bell, that'll help. Kyle Schwarber, that'll help offensively. Problem is he's got to play defense, and that is something you have to be concerned about. Starlin Castro, they just announced he's going to be moving over to third base. They sent their another rookie sensation back down to the minors, going to give him more seasoning. So a lot of older players on this Washington team. The young players are great, but I do have concerns about some of the older players and their injuries. This is one team I'm looking to play under the total in season wins.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bryan. That aging starting rotation, maybe looking towards the Nats and the under. Guys, that finishes it for each and every National League team preview. We will be back tomorrow with the American League preview, hitting every single game. But going around the panel here, Dave, maybe start us off with kind of final thoughts and a best bet if you have one for the watchers.
Yeah, I have a 5% Major League Baseball over and under win prop this year. It's on one of the American League teams. But one of the ones I like in the National League, and I like, this is a thing I do every year. I try and find the worst team going in. And I think the worst team in the National League will be the Colorado Rockies. When you start a season by just dumping your best player to save money, it's just a big, gigantic negative for the entire team. And that's what the Rockies did with Nolan Arenado, who they literally gave away for chump change to St. Louis to save money. Trevor Story is now their best player, and he's a strong favorite to be dealt before the end of the season. This is a team that I think is going to have a real problem maintaining a positive attitude, and they're not a good team to begin with. I think they're going to be a 100-team loser this year. I like the Rockies win total under, and I think they will be the worst team in the National League this season.
All right, looking towards the Rockies under. Guys, a reminder here, Dave Cokin, check him out at WagerTalk.com. When you get his MLB full season, you get the rest of his NHL as well. So check him out, Dave Cokin, WagerTalk.com. We got Steve Merril up next. Steve, any final thoughts here? Best bet for the watchers?
A couple of things. First of all, I'd love to be able to back my hometown Washington Nationals in a bounce-back season, but as Brian Leonard pointed out, a lot of concern with the aging pitching staff. You know, if they can get to the postseason and stay healthy, they're always dangerous with those starters, but I think that is a big if. So I'm going to go back to Marco D'Angelo's hometown, Dave Sharapen's hometown. We're going to take the over in the Pittsburgh Pirates. I couldn't use Brian's money. I couldn't use Dave Cokin's money. I don't blame him on this. But Marco and Sharapen said they'd send me a little bit to sprinkle on the over 59.5. And I'm glad to hear Dave say he thinks the Rockies are the worst team in this league. As I mentioned earlier, they were just one net run better than Pittsburgh, so they very well might be. Yet the Rockies are at 62.5 wins. Pittsburgh's only 59.5. Pirates started 4-17 last year, and then they played a little bit better. They actually won 4 of their last 6 finishing the season. They were 5th in the National League in strikeouts last year, which surprised even myself when I was looking at the stats. So I think there's a little bit of upside. We don't need a lot to go right here to get to 60 wins. They can still lose over 100 games, Drew Martin, and we win this ticket. So I'll take a look at Pittsburgh. And as I mentioned earlier, the NL Central played all their games basically against the AL Central and the NL Central, mostly winning teams. And if you look at one run differential, Pittsburgh won. It should have been a 38% win percentage, about 6 games better than their record. And that equates to about exactly 59 wins. And that was against mostly all winning teams. They'll have actually slightly easier schedule this year. So I think there's a little bit of upside with the worst team, according to the odds makers, the Pittsburgh Pirates, over 59.5 wins.
Steve, I like it. Even the profile of it, you know, 100-loss season and you still cash your over bet. Look towards the Pittsburgh Pirates in that, Steve. Good stuff. And guys, check Steve Merril out at WagerTalk.com. And remember the coupon code. This is a good one. Not only $9 Monday, check them out for that as well, as we're filming this on Monday, but first pitch 200, all spelled out, first pitch 200 at WagerTalk.com. Takes $200 off his full MLB season, and every handicapper at WagerTalk and Sports Memo's full MLB season. So we got Brian Leonard last here with kind of final thoughts on the MLB season. Brian, I know you'll be back tomorrow with the AL preview, but best bet for the watchers as well if you got one.
Yeah, I've got 2. I agree with Dave with Colorado under, and I wouldn't bet the Pittsburgh Pirates over with anybody's money. With that said, everybody knows that, so you're not getting any value in that regard. 2 teams I talked about, Washington looking to play Washington under. Just don't like that pitching staff that can't afford injuries. And they've got guys that have had an injury past, so I can't afford that. So I like that under. I also like the Cubs under. I just don't think the Cubs are set to win this year. The line is propped up based on what they've done in the past, but those players are not here any longer. Yu Darvish is long gone. You take a look at that starting rotation, they've only got one guy I really trust. Cubs under and Washington under are my 2 best bets in the National League.
Cubs and Nats to the under. And Brian, I don't want to double up too much, but I have the Nationals towards the under as well. For my best bet, just their, like you talked about, their starting rotation, aging, and I think the NL East is really underrated. I mean, the Marlins, like Steve brought up in the beginning of the show, being the most profitable team last year, and their starting rotation, plus the fact the Atlanta Braves and New York Mets, I think are going to be a force here for the Nationals to deal with. So I look towards the Nationals on the under for my best bet. And just to give a little bit more context here, instead of doubling up on best bets, I did bet Sandy Alcantara to win the Cy Young, talking about the Marlins here, at plus 20,000, putting $100 down to win 20,000. I thought was a long shot here, so decided to throw that out on the show. But best bet for the Nationals. Oh, it's a heck of a long shot, but if it pays off, that would be a nice one to cash. So guys, for Steve, Brian, Dave, I'm Drew Martin. This is First Pitch. This is the first show for the season. NL preview. We're doing the AL preview tomorrow. This is Monday through Friday. Mark your calendars. It looks like we're going to be starting at 1:45 Eastern time. So come back and join us Monday through Friday throughout the whole summer, breaking down MLB. Best bets. We got all the betting previews. So you're going to want to remember it. WagerTalk.com. For Steve, Brian, Dave, I'm Drew Martin. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Please smash the like button on your way out. Feel free to leave a comment below, too, if you like the show and what we can improve on. We're all ears. So, guys, best of luck, and let's have a great MLB season. Thanks for tuning in.